Things are different now. Our shared disruption and time for reflection, grounding our perspective. Rapid acceleration of trends, long underway, is where we now stand. Customer experiences and digital experiences merging to become one across every market, deep and wide. Digital interactions are now the primary way, if not the only way, customers engage. Here we are, standing at the edge of our new reality. Digital transformation isn't a choice anymore. Your customers demand it. Own this day. Experiment and explore with tools that are open, flexible, intelligent, and stable. Our expertise and open platform are designed to allow builders to say, what if? What can be? The journey ahead may be unknown, but this much we know. Seize this opportunity. Meet your customers where they are, and you will build a bridge to the future. For organizations around the world and the customers they serve, this is the path forward.
Hello and welcome to our Experience Acquia virtual event series. My name is Mark Jeffries and I'm delighted to once again be joining you as your host and moderator across this session. Today we're going to be focusing on new trends and permanent shifts in customer experience. We'll discuss trends from this year and most importantly what that means for 2021. You know, when you look across the last 9 months, many of us probably had a very different plan for 2020, but events quickly focused all of us and created the year of the pivot. But how many of the changes we put into place will we say goodbye to, and how many are here to stay? Well, we'll try to answer that question and many more throughout our session. Coming up, you'll be hearing from Acquia leaders, customers, and through our Q&A later on, each other. Do be a part of the conversation. As we speak today, we want to hear about changes that you've made this year and how you're preparing for 2021. Don't forget to post, tweet, and share throughout using our hashtag Experience Acquia. Your attendance has already made a big difference today. Just for joining, we are making a donation to Black Girls Code on your behalf. Black Girls Code is a not-for-profit organization that focuses on providing technology education for African American girls. To learn more and make an additional donation, see the tab on the left-hand side of your screen. Now, we want to hear from you. We'll be revealing poll questions throughout the program and also welcome you to submit your own questions through the Ask a Question box below the streaming window. How do you access the polling question, you may ask? Well, it's quite simple. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to see the chat window. Now, at the top left of the chat window, you'll see two little icons. One of them is a check mark. Now, if you click the check mark, you will see the current polling question. Once you've chosen your answer, click the chat bubble and you'll be back in the chat window again as if you never even left. We'll be responding to the polls and questions later on in the agenda. So why don't we try a polling question out right now? Go ahead, click that little check mark, okay? And you'll see it. We want to know, has your digital experience with brands changed since the start of the pandemic? You see some answer choices there. Click on the little check mark, right? Okay. Now, all you got to do is make your choice. Go ahead, choose one. All right, nicely done. Very good. We'll discuss later on. First up today, new trends and permanent shifts in CX. Acquia CMO Lynn Capozzi is about to share some fascinating insights from Acquia's recent Global CX Trends survey with important implications for all of us as we look ahead to 2021 and the longer lasting impacts of this most unusual year. Lynn, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Lynn Capozzi. I'm glad that you joined us today. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about new trends and what I think are going to be some permanent shifts when it comes to a customer experience. In case you're not familiar with Acquia, let me take a minute to tell you a little bit about us and really to talk about what even gives us any credibility around thinking about and talking about a great customer experience. We are the only open digital experience company. We are founded by Dries, who is the creator of the open source CMS project Drupal. And we support Drupal, and we help organizations of all sizes be successful in running their web properties. Some of our companies have huge amounts of sites, could have tens or thousands of sites, like a Pfizer or Nestle, or some that have one-time sites, events like the Grammys and the Emmys, the Australia Open. So all different size organizations in a variety of different industries. Again, we help them be successful by running their business, by helping them with their web properties. We have a collection of products that support Drupal, and we are the Drupal company. And we also have a collection of marketing-based products or tools for marketers, marketing automation, a customer data platform, and some other products that you'll hear about. But we're happy to have you here today as we talk a little bit more about the trends that we're seeing in the customer survey. But first, in case you're not familiar with Drupal, I just want to take a few minutes and give you a few stats about Drupal. We think there are over 1.3 million people today using the Drupal platform. And you can tell probably 1 out of about 30 websites in the world are run on Drupal. And with a large open source community, really the value of it is it brings a lot of innovation. So Drupal is very robust, very adaptable, very flexible, and allows organizations to really kind of get their best out of their web property. And it's just an amazing growth in the Drupal community. As I mentioned, we ran a customer experience survey. So we surveyed 8,000 consumers and 800 marketers in a lot of countries around the world: Australia, France, Germany, Japan, Mexico, Singapore, the United States, and the UK. And what we found were there were some distinct differences between how marketers thought they were doing for creating a great customer experience and how consumers thought of that. Now, one important thing that you should note, this survey we conducted in the spring. So it was post-March. So it was during, we had already been experiencing the pandemic during that time. And one of the data points that's very clear to us is that some of the changes that consumers are expecting in terms of the interaction with brands, those changes are going to continue. So people have developed new purchasing patterns, and they expect those purchasing patterns to continue. So 74% of our respondents say that their digital experience with brands has changed since March. Consumers now interact and purchase and are much, much more willing now to do it all digitally. And importantly, they're willing to try new brands, and they are trying new brands. So it's even more important for all of us as marketers to be creating the best customer experience possible and staying in touch and communication with our customers. You know, our survey showed that not only are consumers spending more time engaging with brands digitally, but they're engaging on more diversified channels. So the explosion in channels has forced brands to rethink the digital experience, in particular, how to create a seamless customer experience by unifying all of the channels. 84% of consumers have used digital channels more in 2020 than compared to 2019. Makes sense, right? 42% are using more email, 45% are using more social media, and 44% are using more video streaming. So, you know, this change in consumer habits has brands like rethinking how to use digital channels, how do you drive more customer satisfaction and continue to build those relationships with customers. And the uptick in the use of digital services is expected to continue. So according to McKinsey, who's really done some excellent study work, by the way, since pandemic started, 75% of people are using channels for the first time for activities like banking and entertainment, grocery shopping, and buying apparel. And they say that they will keep returning to these channels, and that actually will become the normal moving forward. So these interactions that consumers are having with brands, those will continue, and don't expect that to change at all. You know, the rise in digital has proved to be a great opportunity for brands, but also presents some challenges, right? Organizations have really been forced into a rapid digital transformation. Some projects that were previously scheduled for 6 months or a year out have been all brought forward to now or within the next 1 to 3 months. In addition to that, what marketers told us is that standard processes that quickly had to change to replace outdated processes, really creating some hurdle for marketers. And so 97% of marketers cite challenges with technology and processes designed to support this digital transformation going forward. What are some of the top challenges that marketers told us that they had? Well, 46% found it challenging to adopt new marketing solutions. It's still not easy enough. 41% getting existing marketing solutions to integrate with new ones, right? So it's all about integration. It's always about integration of the data, and being able to integrate those is a challenge. And creating new content for customer engagement continues to be a challenge for marketers. Content continues to be king. I've said this for years, but it's still true. Content is definitely king right now. So 48% of organizations are saying that they've created more content for customer engagement this year. In addition, 40% of marketers said they're going to reuse content. So people are looking at everyone's content binging, small forms of content, video content, longer forms of content, such as ebooks or case studies and white papers. All of that content binging is continued to increase, and marketers are getting smarter and smarter about how to repurpose that content. Another challenge that marketers face right now, and this came out through the survey, 78% of consumers said that phrases used by many organizations, ours included, surrounding the pandemic have become irritating or overused. And so what are the sayings that have been kind of overused and people don't want to hear anymore? We're all in this together. The new normal, which I've been guilty of, and 19% in these difficult times. So this is the type of terminology as marketers we need to look at striking. We need to look at taking out of our communication that we have with our customers, and really showing that organizations now need to really understand and engage with their customers and consumers. Tone needs to be better. It needs to be more empathetic. That's clearly what our survey told us. And they want to be talked to and addressed in not a challenging way, but in an empathetic and a value way. So clearly, being able to clearly articulate, what's your brand promise? What's that brand proposition? What is the value that people will be getting with your products or your services? One of the other things that jumped out of the survey was about personalization. So personalization is paying off. 96% of organizations that have implemented personalization tools report improvements in customer engagement. And about almost 50% reported that they've had repeat purchases from their existing customers by installing personalization. So for those marketers that are using personalization, it's paying off. And I really think that being able to use personalization requires two things. It requires technology, and it requires a brand strategy that supports personalization. So I'd like you to take a minute, just think about, how are you doing in your own personalization efforts? I think it's a good point. I'm going to put up a question in the poll right now. You can take a look and let us know, and feel free, it's anonymous, so let us know to answer honestly in terms of how you think you're doing on your own personalization. We'll talk about a little bit more through the chat at the end. So for CMOs and marketers that are truly understand business today, it's all about data, right? You can't build an exceptional customer experience with bad data. And so data typically sits in silos. It has, for many, many years, customer data has sat in a variety of different silos, like you see here. Collecting, unifying, and activating data is what will really drive great business going forward. So being able to have a single view of the customer so that you know their habits, you know their purchases, and you're able to communicate those customers, whether it be digital or in a storefront or through a variety of different channels. Being able to understand your customer set and understand the data is the first step in terms of increasing revenue, because then you know, right? Then you know, what campaigns should I do? What promotions should I do? How do I cross-sell and upsell? Or what's the next likely action that my customers will take based on actions from previous customers? And so being able to have all of this data collected together and analyze that data is perfect for a CDP. So a customer data platform, which is obviously a product that we have from Acquia. And it used to be that CDPs a few years ago were only looked at by larger organizations, only retail, and only organizations that had data analysts and scientists that were on staff, but not anymore. Now, CDP technology is much more approachable. So you can see even in the survey, it tells us that organizations that have employees from 250 employees up to 3,000 are now looking at a CDP solution, again, for a single source of data. all different industries. I'm hearing a lot from IT and telecom, manufacturing and production, media as well. So a lot of different industries are now looking at a customer data platform, again, to give that single source of truth. You're going to hear a lot more specifically about the CDP solution from Karen in just a few minutes. Now, if you at all were interested in any of the survey results, you can actually get them. So you can download them right from Acquia.com. You can see all kinds of results, all different regional results from around the world. You can even see differences by age group to hear about what's different from the millennials versus others, and so forth. So I invite you to take a look at that, come download it, and hopefully there'll be a few other tidbits in there that would be of value to you. So thank you for listening. I'm going to turn it back over to Mark, and I'll see you back in just a few minutes.
Thanks to Lynn, excellent content. And we'll be seeing Lynn again in the Q&A session, which is coming up a little later on. So if you have any questions whizzing around your mind right now, you could ask them now or write them down and submit them during the actual Q&A session itself. Next up though, Senior Director Product Marketing at Acquia, Karen Wood, is about to reveal what a customer data platform is and why you need one in her session, Driving Relevant CX with a Customer Data Platform. Karen, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mark. I'm so happy to be here today. My name is Karen Wood. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing here at Acquia. And today I'm going to talk about driving relevant customer experience with a customer data platform and really get into what is a customer data platform and its role within a CX strategy. But before we do that, I just want to take a quick temp check. So if you could take a look at the poll, I'd love to know who on this audience is considering a customer data platform as part of your digital transformation strategy. So if you could just take a quick minute to go down to the poll and enter your feedback, that would be terrific. And let's go ahead and jump right back to the presentation. Thanks so much for taking that quick poll there. So I wanted to start by referencing back to something that Lynn talked about when she talked about all of the disconnected systems creating challenges for marketers and for businesses to drive effective customer experience. Those disconnected systems have a number of results, both for the business and the marketing side of the house, as well as for the consumer who's trying to have an experience with a brand. So some of the impacts of those disconnected systems can create a sense of uncoordination. So one system isn't talking to the other, data that might live in one system isn't able to impact the experience within another system. So this uncorrelated data creates disjointed experiences and makes it really hard for the marketer to actually build a cohesive, personalized experience no matter which channel they're engaging on. So it really limits the potential and the power of what a marketer can actually do with data to drive experiences. And then on the customer side, who is trying to engage with a brand, connecting to the brand in many different ways, they're getting a very unconnected, disjointed experience. For example, the customer might be part of a loyalty program. They call the call center. The call center has no idea who they are. So there's an expectation that consumers have trained, especially now, in 2020, we've been a digital world for a while now, expecting a brand to really meet them at their level and deliver relevance at every touch point. So there's an expectation on the consumer side that the marketer really struggles to deliver with. And it's really this environment that helps set the stage for a CDP. Now, there are a number of ways that brands today try to address this problem and bring data together in order to drive more cohesive experiences. So 3 examples are what you're seeing right here. The first is a data lake, and this is typically owned and operated, built by IT, living in-house. And what it is basically a repository of unstructured data that lives all together, combining data from all of those different silos as per Lynn's presentation. The challenge with a data lake is that it is a barrier for marketers and business users to directly access that data so that they can action off of it. It's also just a bunch of data all mushed together. It's not cleansed or deduped or standardized in any kind of structured way that then can be leveraged for systems of analysis or for engagement. So it's a good attempt to try to unify data, but there are a lot of limitations for that. Another approach that we see marketers hoping to turn to solve these challenges is a DMP. And basically a DMP focuses on anonymous third-party data and builds cookie pools, or basically pools of data that you can leverage for primarily digital advertising use cases. And there is a time and a place for a DMP. A DMP can be a really important part of a digital strategy and a digital ecosystem, but it is not going to bring together all of the first-party data sources from those disparate silos, unify them together, and make it available and actionable for marketers. So there are some limitations for what a DMP can provide as well. And finally, CRM, a tried and true database for your customer data. Again, this has a time and a place, particularly for B2B use cases. It's a great source of bringing data together. Some challenges are, though, it can't necessarily unify all the data that is necessary to drive and inform understanding about customers or segmentation for targeting and personalization. And it's not real time. It's not intended to serve the real-time marketing use cases that, again, as consumers expect to be engaged with in a very relevant way across all these different channels. It's not really built for that and not really meant to support that. So there are a number of ways that, again, brands can try to solve this problem of disconnected systems, disconnected data to really drive cohesive experiences. But it's really through the limitations of what has already existed that a CDP really came on the scene and became important. So CDP was coined back in 2016. Gartner defines it as really a technology for marketers and marketing teams, and really for business users that does essentially three things. It unifies data together, it provides insights that are easy for all teams to understand, and it provides a way to activate that unified data across your whole ecosystem. So for every experience with your customer, you can action off of that unified data. And in a nutshell, that's essentially what it is. I think another piece of what makes those three things so important is the fact that it's all built on a real-time SaaS-based platform. So again, what consumers expect from brands is as they're on their mobile app or engaging in these different ways, that you can meet them where they are. Right message, right content, right relevance, right time, all of that stuff. You kind of need to be on a real-time platform to support those use cases. So again, that's another thing that makes the CDP unique compared to all the other different types of systems that are out there. And then just one more thing to kind of mention about the CDP and just kind of how it works is the goal of the CDP is to take, it can be one, it can be a few, or it can be all of your data collection points that are gathering information about your customers and ingesting that in real time into the CDP. The CDP then does a number of things. It will basically resolve the identities into a way that all systems can make sense of and understand. So it goes through an identity resolution process that cleanses and dedupes and stitches the data together into a single customer profile that then can be used for primarily two things. It can be used for insights. So if you are a local retail manager and you need to just understand your little segment of the world, you can get into this unified data and get a clear understanding of your business. If you're a CMO and you need a comprehensive understanding of your business across all channels, again, you can just go in and access it yourself. It's easy to understand, easy to tap into. You don't need to rely on third parties to get that data for you. So it just makes, it enables a culture of curiosity when you can really explore data, understand data, and just, get the data that you need. And then the second type of use case that it enables is activating data across, CX systems. So email, SMS, direct mail, mobile, chat, call center, what have you, any way that you're engaging in kind of talking to your customers, a CDP can power that experience through really advanced segmentation, through machine learning driven predictive insights, so that you really know who you're talking to and are giving them the right message and, again, an experience that's very relevant for them. And ultimately, the goal here is to do just that, to meet customers at every touch point where they're at through across the whole life cycle, from awareness to consideration, purchase, all the way through to loyalty and back again. To really grow the lifetime value of your customer base is what a CDP is really, really good at. And then just two quick examples here to get into it. So one thing, actually, before we get into the examples, just one thing I wanted to make sure was clear is that CDPs, perhaps when they first came on the scene, were explicitly for very large enterprises. Those were the early adopters of the technology, and that's where you're seeing, have seen a lot of the growth. However, that has changed, and CDPs are really becoming a competitive trigger, a competitive differentiator for brands that really want to compete on delivering the right experience for customers. And that's not just enterprises, it's mid-market, it's SMB, any brand that cares about customer relationships, loyalty, lifetime value, and has a lot of interactions with prospects and customers along the way through the customer life cycle. Those are all really good candidates for a CDP. And another great thing about a CDP is, while we support use cases that are, rather straightforward, we also can support more sophisticated use cases. So as a brand or a business grows and adopts new technologies, new data sources, new ways to engage with consumers, you're sort of future-proofing your business with a CDP to kind of evolve, we evolve with you. In other words, as your company grows, CDP is very open to whatever growth, whatever form factor that growth takes, CDP can enhance the experience for consumers. And now, so two examples that I wanted to address. So the first one is with our customer Lids. And this gets into what I discussed earlier as one of the key foundations of a CDP, which is that identity resolution. So taking data from all of those disparate data sources and resolving it together into one single persistent ID that can be used for insight and action. So in the case of Lids, they had so many different ways that customers, identified themselves or signed up for a loyalty program or signed up for an email list, where they had so many duplicates that by the time their database went through the identity resolution process, they'd reduced that database by 50%. And that's really helpful for a business because that means that every insight that they're gaining about their customers is going to be super accurate because it's not a bunch of dirty data, partial data, or duplicates. So that reduction in database helped them get a lot tighter and a lot cleaner about how they engage with customers. And a good example of this is they ran a win-back campaign for customers who hadn't engaged with Lids in a while to try to bring them back, purchase again. And again, because they were running this campaign off of that consolidated, clean database, they saw a 250K result just from that one email campaign alone. And then, the benefits are boundless, because of all of their marketing is based on this clean data. They're helping to engage with customers more than ever before. And also when COVID hit and Lids had to shut down quite a few of their stores, it was very easy for them to pivot and migrate customers to more of a digital experience until stores could reopen. So again, having that unified data really helped with agility when it was needed. And one more example that I wanted to call your attention to is our customer Wix, based out of the UK and EMEA. But Wix, basically, they prior to using the CDP, the way that they accessed data, the business users, the marketing team, they had to call up the IT department and request, hey, I'd like to run this campaign. Will you pull this list for me? And they would get the list back and could run the campaign. But that process would take them 2 to 3 weeks, typically, for any given campaign or even any new report they wanted to run. It was inefficient. It was causing churn for their IT team, just extra cycles that they would have rather spent doing on other things. So once they had direct access to data, that time frame, that time window of pulling lists for campaigns went from 2 to 3 weeks to a matter of minutes. Making them way more agile and nimble to respond to market dynamics, trends, opportunities for campaigns that they were seeing. So huge efficiency gains there. And then I also wanted to mention they are actively using the CDP data for their call center. So although a CDP is typically perceived as a marketing solution, which it is, it can also be used for other ways that you engage and connect to consumers. And they were able to, by using a CDP in their call center, identify customers who were part of a loyalty program, what their average order value was, et cetera, and were able to close tickets faster, give customers what they need a lot faster, and really boost the efficiency of those calls as well. So huge gains there as well. And that is just a quick overview of what a CDP is, what it's capable of doing, the value and benefits it provides, and how it really solves the problem of disparate data, disparate silos, and disconnected systems, helping marketers be more effective and helping consumers more effectively engage with the brands with whom they want to engage in the first place. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, of course, to Karen for those fascinating insights. Now, to discuss a little bit more around some of the key findings that we've heard so far today, I'm delighted to welcome two Acquia customers who are going to share their thoughts and the latest developments in their digital journeys. We have Aqif Hassen, Head of Digital Strategy and Operations at AMD, and he's responsible for integrated global digital strategy and platforms, development of plans covering all aspects of web, personalization, email, and marketing automation. And we have Ben McRae, who is Senior Director of Web Strategy with Marketing Design Group, that's MDG. And Ben works with clients on UX audits, site audits, other strategy pieces, and he also heads the MDG development team. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
It is our absolute pleasure. So just to get started, in about a sentence, tell us a bit more about your organizations and maybe what keeps you most busy at the moment. Aqif, I'll start with you.
Thank you. Like at AMD, I mean, we develop high-performance computing and visualization products, and right now, they're very exciting times, in terms of what's happening in the industry as well as in the gaming space. So all of these changes are keeping us very busy, both on the digital as well as on the product side as well.
Did you find over the last 9 months with this most bizarre year that the workload increased quite considerably?
Absolutely. I mean, the workload has definitely increased, and but it's been a good ramp up. It's been a good ramp up in terms of trying to kind of step up to some of the digital challenges. But the increase has been kind of well received, if you will, within the organization as well.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Ben, same question to you. Tell us more about the organization and what keeps you particularly busy.
Sure. So MDG is a full-service marketing agency, and we specialize in event and association marketing. So we focus on attendee acquisition, exhibit and sponsorship procurement, membership marketing, advocacy campaigns, that kind of thing. So the last 9 months, we've been helping a lot of our clients shift their events from an in-person focus over to virtual experiences.
And it's interesting, isn't it, being in the event space. In March, you probably thought, well, that's the end of our business, but look how you were able to pivot.
Absolutely. It's been quite the learning process, but happy to say we're coming out well on the other side.
Fabulous. Well, thank you for that. So let's get into some of the questions. We heard Lynn share the findings from the Global CX Trends report. A very interesting stat she shared was 74% of respondents say their digital experience with brands has changed since the start of the pandemic. How far is that true for your brands? Aqif, I will hand that over to you.
Sure, I think it's quite relevant, and it also speaks to some of the changes we've seen not only within our digital channels, but just in the industry in general as well. This trend and this change has been happening over the past few years, but I think in the last 9 to 12 months with the pandemic, that has accelerated, and people want to be able to connect and engage with you via our digital channels in a much more engaging, real-time fashion than they've ever had in the past.
Right, it's a big demand, isn't it? And obviously, you're doing everything you can to meet it. Ben, what's your response?
Well, as they say, the only constant is change, right? So we've seen enormous transformations in our industry, in particular, and in our clients' industries as well. Formerly, big in-person events have been a major component of the brands that we work with. For instance, we work with NAB, the National Association of Broadcasters, and in their community, NAB is practically synonymous with their annual trade show. So obviously, that's proved a wee bit problematic in 2020. So while we have some solid strategies for translating these kinds of shows into virtual events, the reality is that as far as brand engagement is concerned, not even talking about issues related to revenue here, brand engagement is always going to be lower in those kind of virtual environments. And it's been long clear that these types of event-focused brands were going to need to pivot toward a more comprehensive digital 365 days a year experience in order to really succeed. The pandemic was really just a case of that timer running out sooner than anyone expected. So really what we've been working on is helping businesses shift to a model that's based around two key principles. One is digital publishing, so including content production, curation, solicitation. And then the other is online community, meaning not just traditional message boards, but regular informal roundtables, product demos, Q&A sessions, very interactive and importantly led mostly by people within the associated communities. So that's not only helpful in fostering a sense of investment in the brand, but it also kind of lowers the burden on the organization to produce these huge swaths of live content.
So there was a big change for you in the organization, given what you had to do. How much of the changes that were delivered were asked for by your clients, Ben, and how many were actually offered by you as an organization, seeing that change had to happen very quickly?
It was about 50-50. We had some clients who were very proactive about this change, a few who were looking to kind of make this pivot even before these events transpired. And the great thing about that is we were able to bring some of the learnings and experience we had in those transformations to some of our clients that were lagging a little bit further behind.
Fascinating, thank you. And actually, Ben, I'm going to stay with you for one more. We also heard that 45% of brands are diversifying the types of digital channels used to reach customers. Have you had to change the way you connect with your clients and customers this year as well? And are you looking at new channels?
Yeah, most definitely. MDG, we've always strived to be truly omnichannel in approach to our marketing. So I like to think we've been a little bit ahead of the pack there, but what's been very validating is that so many of our clients these days are becoming more receptive and in many cases are downright eager to diversify their channels, to take more risks, partly as a necessity of the pandemic, of course. We're heavy users of Acquia's Campaign Studio and Campaign Factory. We use a demand-side platform or DSP called Basis to do programmatic advertising. We've been doing a little bit of SMS marketing, text messages. We've seen mixed results there, to be honest. Some audiences respond very strongly to it, some barely engage at all. But then for international audiences, we've been investing a lot in WeChat campaigns and in general looking at social networks outside the sort of Americentric view of the digital ecosystem that many companies have, where they're focused mostly on Facebook and Twitter. What I will say is that 9 times out of 10, we've seen greater success helping organizations improve the way they're using their existing channels. So being smarter, more targeted, more personalized, more analytical. There tends to be a lower investment in working within those existing channels for one thing, and we see so many organizations who are really not using their existing tool set to its full potential. And that isn't to say it isn't worth diversifying. It definitely is, especially if you're looking to expand into new markets, but sometimes there are easier wins available.
Very interesting. I like that you're taking advantage of what's already in place, but also some experimentation as well. Aqif, what would you add to the conversation here?
Sure. I think, given these changing times, we've had to pivot quite a bit as well. With bringing, like for example, the way we, talk about launching new products and so on. Bringing all that to purely the digital realm, right? Where we've historically done it in kind of a live person setting. We've had to bring all of that onto our digital channels, and also make sure that we provide that in the most engaging and at the same time the most seamless kind of engagement fashion, if you will, so that our users around the globe are able to experience the great products and technologies that we bring to market.
That's great. Thank you. Ben, this is a big number, of course, and almost not surprising, but 96% of marketers reported improvements with customer engagement after personalization initiatives, right? We love a bit of personalization. Have you been able to leverage any of that really to recently to improve your client experience?
Yeah, I really can't overstress how important personalization is, especially in reaching out to millennials and Gen Z. You know, I'm a millennial, and while I push back pretty hard against a lot of the common stereotypes people like to level at our generation, the reality is, I grew up with a lot of major brands that are able to provide very personalized experiences. Amazon, Facebook, eventually Netflix. Netflix feels so confident about their recommendation engine these days that they release a randomizer that'll just autoplay a movie for you. I can't personally imagine using that myself, but from what I understand, it's been pretty well received. But the point is, that's the kind of experience that we tend to expect. My positive spin on it is that it's just that we know there are other more efficient resources out there, so why would we waste time in an app or a website or whatever that isn't personalized? And that, of course, begs the question, how can companies with significantly fewer resources than Amazon, Facebook, Netflix start leveraging personalization? And the reality is that you don't need to be wildly sophisticated here. True personalization is something that you can really grow into, but there are some great easy to use tools out there that let you do some very useful site customization, for instance, based on some simpler user behaviors or list segmentation. Acquia's own Campaign Studio, for instance, has a widget that you can drop on your site that'll display content only to members of a certain segment in your database, and that's personalization right there. And I'll be frank, in a few years' time, that's may not cut it. You might need to do a little bit more. It's a good time to start thinking about things like AI and machine learning and brainstorming what a recommendation engine might look like. But for the moment, all you really need to accomplish is making it feel like the communications that you're putting out in front of me aren't the same as you're putting out in front of everybody else. So something that's just a little bit more relevant to me specifically, so that customers feel like you're talking to them instead of to anyone who will listen.
Wise words, and we will take your advice and guidance. Thank you for that. It's funny you mentioned the autoplay on the likes of Netflix and Hulu. It's great until that moment where they flash up a little sign that goes, "Are you still watching?" Then you realize you need to get on with something else in your life. Oh my, how many hours have I been here for? Aqif, we know that even though many brands have really fast-tracked their digital transformation in 2020, many others may be looking for a starting point. Their journey has yet to really begin. What's your advice for evolving a brand's outdated digital ecosystem? Where should they start?
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of digital transformation, I think companies that are not fully, like fully invested in their digital transformation journeys, I think will definitely feel and sense that they're far behind, especially with the pandemic and so on. But in terms of a great, like a place to start, I think like I would recommend brands that are just getting into this transformation phase to take a few steps back, and before kind of considering kind of platforms and technologies and so on, to try and strategize and take the time that's needed to plan and see what problems you're trying to solve, and what opportunities are important to you and your organization. That I think is key before even kind of looking at tools and platforms and development and so on and so forth. Because having that solid plan, the solid goal, and how and what you want to see at the other end. At the end of the tunnel is important, and once you have that, I think like in terms of answering which platforms, which solutions are needed to get you there is much more easier.
Yes, excellent. But, let me ask you something. They say that perfection is the enemy of progress. Do you believe in baby steps, at least striking up a couple of small achievements? Or do you think planning, waiting, and doing it in a big effort is the advice you would hand out?
So it depends. So I would say yes and no. It depends on what problems you're trying to solve. For anything that is customer facing, or anything that involves engagement with your end customers, I would strongly recommend baby steps, right? Because you don't want to risk any of your relationships that you have with your audiences, with your customers, or your future customers as well. But in terms of some of the other things to do with kind of back-end technologies, processes, and so on, and workflow, I think there you have a lot more flexibility to do, to take those, bigger risks, to take, to make those changes, almost 360-degree changes, if you will.
Brilliant, thank you. Ben, really the same question to you. Let's say you're advising an organization, they're starting on this transformation journey. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so we always say that we want to start with data, or data, but I was a Trekkie, to me it's always data. I'll be upfront, I hate data projects. I love looking at data, analyzing data, using data, but that's step 2, right? That's when you get to the fun part. Step 1 is just getting a handle on all the data that you own and have access to, standardizing that data so that it doesn't get messy or lost in the worst case, and then putting together a segmentation strategy based on that data. And that's really essential to success in any of the other areas that we've talked about today. You simply can't put together an effective content strategy or improve your existing marketing channels or do any personalization unless you really understand your audience from a demographic, a firmographic, a behavioral perspective. If I had to suggest an even more specific place to start, I'd say you should identify your one source of truth. And hopefully you can kind of hear the capital letters in my voice there. But it's the place where all of your data eventually flows from your CRM or your AMS, your marketing platforms, your reg system, whatever. A CDP, a customer data platform, is built for that specific purpose, but there are other options too. There are data lakes out there. You can actually use your CRM for that in many cases, depending on how it's configured. But the important thing is to pick something and then figure out how you're going to make sure that all your data gets to that central platform with as few exceptions as possible. I want to say no exceptions, but sadly this is the real world, so I won't. But that's my recommendation.
First of all, totally agree with you on data and Star Trek, outstanding character. But listening to you talk about data in this context, it's not just a great asset. You're really talking about it like it's the foundation for success. How many organizations do you think don't understand that fully?
I unfortunately think it is a significant percentage. I would almost hazard to say more than half. And
wow.
One of the things I always tell clients these days is the problem these days is not having too much data. Everyone has too much data. The problem is that you have to figure out what to actually do with that data. Figure out what data is actually the most important thing. Ignore the noise that kind of swims around the myriad statistics and analytics that we all have access to these days, and find that data that's really going to give you those core insights and help you inform your customer journeys.
Fabulous. Thank you for that answer. All right, well, let's end with a fun one. 9 months we've been going through this pandemic, and there's a lot of new catchphrases around. Which one of those catchphrases are you most looking forward to leaving behind in 2020? Lynn mentioned some of the most overused phrases are, we're all in this together, in these difficult times, and the new normal. Okay, so I'd like to get rid of all of those. But Aqif, I'll start with you.
I would love to leave the phrase social distancing behind, and be able to socialize a lot more freely. Yes, exactly.
I agree with you. Marvelous. Thank you for that. Ben, last word goes to you.
Anything where a company is referring to me as part of their family. I love my family, but trust me, they're not the model that companies really want to be striving for in terms of customer service. My sister's the queen of not texting me back, and my mom needs way more tech support than I want to provide for any businesses out there. So let's just keep the relationship professional.
I think that's very wise. You will keep your social distance from companies calling you family. I like it. Ben, Aqif, thank you both so much for joining us today. Very insightful and very enjoyable as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that was a fun conversation. And now to bring our event to a close, we have our Q&A session. So with all the content that you've heard and all the amazing insight that you've seen, what questions are on your mind? Ask your question in the window right now. And if we have time, we'll get to it. But I'm joined by Karen Wood and Lynn Capozzi for the Q&A session. Welcome to both of you. Nice to see you.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
So why don't we at least start by seeing how we did in those polling questions? So the first one we asked was, has your digital experience with brands changed since the start of the pandemic? And these were the results. Let's see. The 80% of the audience said yes, their digital experience with brands has changed. 10% said it's changed a bit. And surprisingly, 10% said no change at all. Lynn, when you see these numbers, what do you think?
Not surprising to me at all, especially the 80% number, because our survey told us that, right? Like our survey told us that, with 100% going digital with everything in almost every industry, not a surprise that kind of that, that experience has changed. The other thing that the survey told us, interestingly, is that, even one bad brand experience can turn a consumer now away from a brand, particularly millennials. So that's what our survey told us. And so it's interesting, it's kind of like you only have one, you can't blow it, right? So you got to have that great experience. I'm not at all surprised, that about the numbers, because I think it reflects the same as what was in the survey.
And look how easy it is nowadays in the digital world to move from one brand to another. You can ditch a brand and 2 seconds later be connected with a brand new one.
Right, exactly.
Karen, similar opinion?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that our new reality, to coin a phrase, is talking about is the fact that it's so easy to be fickle with brands. So it's very easy to move from one brand to another. As you're browsing online, doing stuff online, you don't have the stickiness of a physical channel or a person-to-person experience to really solidify that brand experience. So it's really easy to hop around and try out new brands that maybe you weren't familiar with before.
Exactly. All right. Now, our second polling question was, is personalization a key piece of your digital engagement strategy? I'm going to look at the answers here. And 28% said yes. Okay. So that's an interesting number, actually. We'll come to you, Lynn, in a second. 42% said just don't know where to start. And 28% not there yet. Lynn?
Yeah, again, I'm not surprised. So congratulations to the people that are doing personalization now. I think it's a great feat to be able to do. I can't say that I know any marketer that thinks they're doing a tremendous job, by the way, with personalization. So rarely do we find anyone that says, yes, I'm doing it. I'm doing a really, really terrific job. The question about kind of where do I get started on personalization is pretty common. And it's one that I encounter all the time. And I think what happens is people get overwhelmed because when you think about personalization, we think we want to personalize everything everywhere. And that's kind of how we need to get started. And that's actually just not true. So kind of the way we think about it is I typically talk about personalization in kind of the stages, common stages of crawl, walk, and run. And so the advice I normally give is, when you're just starting out and you're entering that crawling phase or stage, if you will, I think the best place to start is by using the data that you already have around personalization. Personalization, particularly around your site for site personalization, and use the data that you already have. That you're not forcing yourself to collect new data when you're first starting out and you're testing and you're trying personalization. So, I've seen people be really successful in personalization, myself included in my own marketing use, is by doing things like personalize and looking at things like geolocations, right, where people are coming from, or maybe personalization around the particular type of device, because, Ben talked a lot about multi-channel, and that's a perfect, I think, use case example for starting personalization based on the device that you're on, or maybe it's the amount of frequency of visits to the site. So those are kind of like areas that typically I see as like really the best places to get started when it comes to personalization. Then you can move on, right? Then you can look at, while you're collecting more data, you can look at browsing behavior or events, for instance, or the true cross-channel personalization. But I think those early examples, I think really, is really a good place to start. Long-winded answer, but there you go.
No, it was a perfect answer. And you're proving that there can be degrees of personalization. And once again, I said it earlier, perfection is the enemy of progress, right? At least make some baby steps. I love that. Thank you. The final polling question was, is incorporating a customer data platform part of your digital transformation strategy? As of now, I'm looking at the results here. Poll number 3, the answers that came in, 32% said yes, it's happening right now. 16%, and this is coming to Karen, said definitely in 2021. 42%, though, sizable majority, said exploring the options, and 10% say maybe not even for us. Karen, what's your response?
Well, taken together, people exploring CDP options and having it as part of their digital strategy is 74% of the people who responded. And so my reaction to that is it makes sense. And it actually connects to what Lynn was just talking about in terms of a personalization strategy, because a personalization strategy is only as effective as the data that's powering it. So step one, if you want to personalize, is really to get a handle on your data. But also, as Lynn mentioned, it doesn't have to be everything at once. It's not about boiling the ocean. I think for a lot of brands, it is a gradual approach where first you're going to take things in bite-sized chunks, personalize on the website using the data that you already have. You might also do that in email, personalize your email outreach based on the data that you have. But driving all of that, brands do understand, especially now when, because of our new reality, we are pivoting to digital. It's a digital first experience for all brand to consumer communication. You have to get your data in order and you have to get it clean and it has to be able to be leverageable. So they really go hand in hand.
All right, thank you for that. Karen, while I've got you, a question that came in read like this. We've recently merged databases due to an acquisition, right? And that must happen so much, especially nowadays. Would a CDP help me address issues with deduping customer records? Because I'm guessing this is going to be from two different organizations. So could the platform still work?
Yes, terrific question. So the short answer is yes, a CDP will help with that. I will preface that by saying not every CDP will help with that. Acquia CDP is one of the CDPs that is very good at doing just that. So if you have data and needing your data accurate, an important step is resolving the identity, which means cleansing, deduping, stitching, and enriching that data across these different databases. So if you have done an acquisition, you need to move the data. I think step one would be identifying duplicates that might live across both of them so that you can deliver one experience to the same person rather than two disjointed experiences triggering off of different sets of data.
And Karen, as a follow-up, there must be some organizations, and I say this with nothing but respect, who think they've got their data sorted out. They probably don't need a CDP the way you've been describing it. Why would they be wrong? What are the clues that actually they don't have in place what they think they have?
Yeah, for any brand that cares about their direct relationship to the consumer, and that covers a whole host of industries. I mean, pretty much every industry cares about that because that's what's going to drive your loyalty and retention. I mean, lifetime value equals revenue. And so across a whole span of companies, they might not think it's for them or important for them. But again, if you think about kind of the bite-sized chunks and ways to approach bringing data together and how that can impact the experiences that you drive, I would question, kind of back to what Lynn was saying, if you had data, that was accurate and clean and coming from different sources, what could that drive in terms of website personalization? What could that drive in terms of email personalization? And you can start small. It's not like you have to bring all the data from every database that lives in your whole ecosystem. Even if you start with just a few, the insights that you can get from that and the experiences that you can drive from that are super impactful. And so again, if you care about that relationship with brands, it's going to matter.
Great, thank you for that. Lynn, in your presentation, you said content is king, and of course it is, but I'm fascinated to know, are there any examples that you've seen of where organizations have elevated their content? Is it perhaps through different use of video or maybe podcasting? Anything that you can guide us towards in terms of elevating the impact of our content?
I talk to a lot of marketers and a lot of people right now, in the past few months are actually looking at their content strategy, even doing an evaluation of their current content. And so while everybody's content binging and everybody's on the web kind of doing all the content binging, I'm seeing definitely a lot more video, podcasts for sure. And I think people are trying all different channels. I'll give you a great example. One of our great customers, King Arthur Baking, right? So apparently, since we've all been home, everyone's been baking. And so they did they did a content audit, and they added a lot more content to their site, and they actually put a baking show on the site. They have a hotline, a baking hotline that they have that they, where you can get support and get help, and they put a ton of recipes on the site. And so I really think that that's like a great example of adjusting your content based on what people are looking for right now and based on our current times, in all different types of forms, short form, long form. Everyone's really eating it up, if you will.
Quite literally. Actually, I'm going to share now, personal. I actually made popovers the other day. They were outstanding. The secret is preheat the baking tray. That was all I needed to do. And for any Brits watching, that's Yorkshire puddings. Oh my goodness, our time is almost up. So I have one final question, and it's really related to the panel question that I asked the team earlier. What is the catchphrase that really, out of this whole pandemic surrounding it, you're most looking forward to just saying goodbye to in 2020? So let's see. I'll go to Karen first. What would you not like to hear again?
I am ready to be done with sheltering in place, both as a phrase and also simply doing it.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Lynn, you get the last word.
I am done with pivoting. So I'm going to put the pivot word behind it. No more pivot.
I love it. Oh my goodness. 2020 is almost up, but for now, in terms of this particular event, our time is up. So Karen and Lynn, thank you both so very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for your time and being part of the conversation. Before you leave, don't forget to learn more about Black Girls Code and consider donating to this amazing organization. We plan to host more Experience Acquia virtual events next year, so be on the lookout for those announcements. And in fact, we want to hear from you about future topics, how we can do better. So please do take our feedback survey. You'll see it on the left-hand side of your screen. And as our way of saying thanks for joining today, we're going to be sending you a small token of our appreciation. It won't be my popovers. Keep an eye on your email for more information. If your question wasn't answered today, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. Do not worry. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll see you next time.